presumably to join Anger in his role as priest magus magician.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think this is an accidental thing. I think these are conscious attempts to bring about sort of rebelliousness and various ideas. I mean, that's part of the reason people shock in most art, is to generate some kind of transformative or, jarring moment in the viewer.
Now, you also mentioned Grant Morrison. His medium is very different. He uses graphic novels, and he has a series of them with the Invisibles. Now, in your description of the participants all coming together, all kind of having a group mind, it's all very focused, and you have this community observing, the film. Whereas Morrison is producing his talismanic creations individually, and they're consumed by the readers in a chaotic, haphazard, non-unified way. So what kind of effect does that have instead?
Well, and in the Invisibles in particular, I think, I said this in the paper, there's a question as to whether, because Morrison treats both the characters in the novel, in the graphic novel, and also even the sort of attitude towards the readers, as if to say, where are the Invisibles? I need to contact the Invisibles. The Invisibles need to be manifest somehow. And in a way, I feel like what he was asking was, he was actually trying to create Invisibles. I mean, I think he says that explicitly, too, that this was, here's an example of something that he had said in an interview, that he said, the Invisible-style hypersigil requires a very close personal involvement with and surrender to processes occurring within the text, which sets up a bizarre and wholly magical feedback between the real and imaginary worlds, until it becomes impossible to tell them apart. And I think Morrison writes the Invisibles in a very sort of, there's a ambiguous idea of whether or not he thinks Invisibles actually exist, or is he making Invisibles through this comic.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the idea of the mirror, which is the emblem, the badge that the Invisibles have, what is a mirror? Is actually in one of the pages in the graphic novel is just like the mirror is facing us, as a reader. So he's sort of, and he's treating us as if maybe we are the Invisibles. And he does blur the idea of reality and imaginary. And so I don't think he needs to have the concentrated audience that a film does, because he designed the comic to basically engage each individual viewer as if they are an Invisible.
Mm-hmm. Now, and he also has a longer progression instead of an encapsulated 90 minutes or 2 hours. He's got this over a series of books, so it actually has this larger feedback loop and a larger time of kind of deployment within the minds of the readers.
Yeah. Well, early in the series, there was some possibility that the series was going to be canceled, and he had asked his readers. Again, another one of those things I wish I had. I didn't think about this. He'd asked his readers to basically charge some kind of sigil or talisman, basically masturbating, using fluids and such to charge these talismans to bring back the Invisibles, and of course the Invisibles did not get canceled. So even that, he sort of invokes, he treats the readers as if they are magical participants and active, agents of magic, and so that was definitely a way of connecting the audience directly. The other thing I noticed that, if you see pictures of Grant Morrison, he looks just like the main character, one of the main characters, King Mob. Even Morrison then is trying to sort of blur the distinction between the comic and the reality, whatever it is.
What you're describing, though, seems to me to have a larger manifestation kind of in media in general. A lot of companies kind of use this technology to market things, or to you see these memes or memes on blogs, on all kinds of places on the internet, to kind of have this viral transfer of ideas or mentality. Whether it's selling Gap jeans, or whether it's wasting people's times on their blog and filling it up with what's your favorite anime character.
Yeah.
These kind of things propagate in the minds of people.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that what we have are particular people who are more plugged into using that into kind of transferring their ideas into people. Recently I was talking to somebody about the Da Vinci Code, and and this person was like, well, look, it's a terribly written book, poorly edited. The story is not, the ultimate story of like the bloodline of Christ is not new. It's been around for 20, 30 years. But what did Dan Brown do that was different from everyone else? He was great at marketing it.
Yeah.
And by the marketing is what charged it, by getting that out there.
Because of people using it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then also the reaction, kind of like what you were saying, the transgressive nature of Anger's work and engaging the participants, it does the same thing with other people.
Right.
I would say Harry Potter kind of does the same thing. You get these people who are pro and these people who are con, and whether they're with it or not, they're all putting energy and kind of charging the talismanic entity.
The significance, this to me, that brings up the point about, well, then what makes it different? And I think an important distinction here is because Anger's work here, Grant Morrison's, I'd say maybe Alan Moore's, I'd also bring up Robert Anton Wilson. Their work is purposely designed, in a sense, to liberate one from dogma, let's say, or in other words, it's an ironic thing because we're buying these products, we're buying the Invisibles comics, we're buying, but yet the goal is to sort of liberate us from that kind of blind ideological following of consumeristic memes and such. Like, in other words, they're trying to inoculate us by making us rebellious. If Invisibles are about anything, it's about a form of rebellion, and it's the same with Kenneth Anger's films.
Well, I would wonder if they're trying to get rid of ideology. I think they're trying to change people's ideologies from one to another. I don't know if you can actually get rid of an ideology.
You can't. Exactly. Well, they're trying, but they're trying to, all right. That's why I said it's ironic, because in order to, Crowley, another one, many people, especially in the last 125 years or so, sort of set out to liberate us. I mean, even people like Foucault and sort of like postmodern thinkers set out to sort of liberate us from these kind of shackles of being led about by people whose sole purpose is to fill their pockets. The problem is, in order to do that, they need to use medium, which are consumed products, and so I think, especially Grant Morrison, because he writes, Invocation of My Demon Brother, these things are, 30 years old now almost, so, in fact, they are 30, so it's a different time, whereas Grant Morrison is a chaos magician. He's very plugged into technology and media and using it, and so his direction of liberating us from it sort of presumes that we're already consumer culture people.
Mm-hmm.
Anger wasn't necessarily in the realm where that would be the case, and in fact, you couldn't buy his films, let's say, when they were out. It's not like a comic book. So two different things, but I think the sort of overall message would be to resist being led about by them. And Morrison's book, Anarchy for the Masses, which the Guide to Invisible, it's a great name, Anarchy for the Masses.
Now, you mentioned Alan Moore. His books or his graphic novels are being remade into movies. Yeah. V was done by the Wachowski brothers. What's going on with Moore? I mean, is he as do you think he's as plugged in as Morrison is on using his medium as ways to transfer these kind of ideas? I
wonder. He and Grant Morrison sort of come out of the same, milieu, the same sort of cultural period and locale in a sense. So unlike Morrison, however, who is very explicit about his aims and his goals, Alan Moore seems to be a little more tight-lipped about that part of it. It's clear if you've read Promethea, it's pretty clear that he's really diving deeply into creating a sort of an occult realm in the novels. It's really hard to read Promethea and not recognize the absolute depth of his commitment to his practices and to his ideas. So I don't think it's much different. What's interesting to me is that the Wachowski brothers apparently had approached Alan Moore to do another film or something before they did The Matrix. I'm not sure what it was about, but interestingly to me that The Matrix and The Invisibles have many similarities that people have often pointed out are a little more than coincidence. In The Invisibles, the sort of chosen sort of savior person, Dane McGowan, is brought up to this rooftop and thrown off a rooftop in order to, just like
right.
Keanu Reeves is. I mean, there's a lot of things. King Mob, the leader of the Invisibles in this particular setting, has sunglasses, a bald head, and a leather jacket, much like Lawrence Fishburne does.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no doubt that they had read either. So I think there's a connection there, and I think that Alan Moore is probably plugged in. Maybe not so thoroughly as Grant Morrison, but...
Well, okay, but to what end are these disparate people working? I mean, yeah, I'm not going to, kind of conflate them all and say, oh, they're working into this, unified end or anything. But what are they ultimately trying to do? Are they... I mean, if you say they're trying to liberate the minds of their readers, I mean, are they really liberating it? I mean, is this really a technology that... kind of like, rubbing two sticks together that ultimately is a technique to get someone in a particular place that ultimately kind of burns itself up. Rubbing two sticks, they ignite and ultimately destroy themselves. Are these technologies going to destroy themselves? Are they going to liberate people, or are they just going to enslave them in a different way?
Well, that's a good point. But you also presume then that there is an end goal in mind. I mean, in some sense, it's sort of I think, planting. I like to think of the viral meme bomb. Like it's planted and then they run away. Well, let's see what happens if it explodes. Like things haven't been working so far. World, in many ways, many parts of our world are really crumbling under the sort of, our Western culture. So what if we were to do something that scattered that? What if we did something to change paradigms instantly? That's why I think that with Morrison's statement about it being the sort of like hypersigil, he actually said in another quote that the Invisibles is to, I want to say magic, what the Manhattan Project was to the bullet. I mean, that he was trying to really make a point that this is supposed to be have this impact where it frees us from conventions of some kind, I guess. But as to your point about, does this just lead to some... That's something Robert Anton Wilson struggled with, too, I think, in a lot of the things that he wrote. It's like, and the people he discusses, like Leary, McKenna, and those folks, I mean... I guess what I'm saying is liberation not a worthy end goal in itself? Is the process of practicing freeing ourselves from those kind of things not a worthy practice in itself? And can it be transformative both in society and in an individual?
Well, see, I wonder if that's kind of naive. I mean, freeing themselves to what end? If you get out of jail, you're free out of jail, and you're no longer, confined by that, but now you're in society, and there's going to be in another kind of prison. So, I mean, unless you have some kind of teleological end or some kind of morals and values or structure that you're replacing one to the other, if you're just kind of like, well, let's just tear up the structures and see what happens, well, I mean, you're ultimately going to have another kind of structure form, whether it's intentional or organic.
Let's use a better metaphor to me might be a baseball game. So we can, we're all playing a game, and this is the problem, is that we all play the same game. Now, some of us are better at it, some of us have better equipment, and a lot of times all we do and struggle in our life is just to get a better turn at bat, just to have a better position, etc. But we still keep playing the game. What I think people like Morrison and Alan Moore and Anger and other people like that are trying to do is to show us a different game.
Okay.
Now, we might be playing a game, that is true, but the fact is the game that we're playing sucks. I mean, the game that we're playing is futile and failing, and yet we don't stop playing the game. And so I think they're saying, like, look, there's possibilities. And I want to say what I appreciated about these people, too, is that it's very collective. I mean, the Invisibles is all about collectivity. Invisible cells have 5 people, and they're networked with others. Anger's films, it's not. These have participants involved. I mean, collectivity to me is the sort of the best inoculation against a lot of the problems which they're trying to liberate us from. And so I mean, I think it has potential. I don't think it's. Is it futile? Will it work? Probably not work if your goal is to change the world, but...
Well, what do you mean the collective? Are they trying to say individuals kind of organically working together, or are they trying to put kind of a group before the individual?
Yeah, see, that's the anarchy part. I mean, I think it's voluntary